living fully alive in every way. You're listening to Relationship Prescriptions with Dr. Carol.
Welcome, friends, once again. It's Dr. Carol, and this is Relationship Prescriptions. I hope you stay tuned for this whole episode. Matt and Kerry's story is something that will bless you in all kinds of ways. I know that Matt and Kerry's story has already blessed me, and there are some similarities in portions of our journey. But this is a story of grief, of loss, but more than that, of hope and renewal and joy and love. It's just going to be such a full experience for your heart. And I know this will bless you. Matt and Kerry, thank you for joining us on the program today.
Thank you. It's an honor to be a part. So thank you for having us.
Matt Perkins is worship pastor at the People's Church in Fresno, California. Kerry Crane Perkins served alongside her husband as children's pastor at North Point Church in Fresno. Well, Matt and Kerry have each experienced loss, and now God brought them together. There's just so much that we could talk about, but let me just start by Matt and Kerry, just each of you, just share about the loss of your previous love, the pain that ended your previous marriage.
Well, I moved from my wife, Mary Beth, and I and our two daughters moved from Orlando, Florida, where we were serving on staff of a great church there. And in 2014, we moved and felt like God was leading us to make this transition. And so we were in a new community across the opposite side of the United States. And a few months after we arrived here in Fresno, we went to the doctor. My wife had a checkup, went to the doctor, and on December 23rd of 2014 received the diagnosis that she had triple negative breast cancer.
Wow.
And it was, a blow to us. We were getting ready to start actually just a few hours later that day, we had our first Christmas production at the church. And since we had been there, and so we had so many things going through our minds that everything is spinning, when you hear those words. And she started into treatment, aggressive treatment, just a couple weeks later, and did that through July of 2015, from January through July, and then was progressing to, she finished chemo, was moving towards surgery at the end of July, and we received word she had some more tests, wasn't feeling well, and then we found out that the cancer had spread. And 7 days after we found out that news, she passed away. And we were kind of at that stage of going, okay, we believe. My daughters, at that time, my oldest was a freshman in college, and my youngest was a freshman in high school. So we had, everything was in transition in our lives. And here we are at that point going, okay, God, we trust you, but this is difficult. And so that was kind of our first year at the church and in this community. And
Wow.
So, Kerry's story, was while we were still at the same, in the same community. Just a few months later is kind of when her story, that all kind of happened. So
yeah, it was in November 22nd, 2015, and it was like a normal Sunday morning. Although my husband Eddie was getting ready to speak to our adult service about some of the building stuff that we were getting ready to do. We had been in the works of having a children's building built for several years, and it was finally coming to, to happen. And so he was getting ready to speak at the morning services, and I got a phone call that he spoke the first service and then walked off the stage and collapsed.
Wow.
And with no medical condition that we knew of at all, and seemed to be pretty healthy, was athletic, took good care of himself. We found out that he had a condition called dilated cardiomyopathy, and he died after he collapsed that morning. And so our family of 5 boys, and we have 4 biological and 1 we were in the middle of adopting, our youngest, and they range from 20, well, then it was, oh gosh, I don't even remember. Now they are 10 to 22. And our entire world turned upside down. We've been there for 14 years serving at that church, and Eddie and I, we had known each other since we were 16 years old, and so it was just a really big blow to our family, what was happening, and so we had to figure things out from there.
Huge shock. I don't know that there's one way that's easier. Matt, you in some way got to say goodbye to Mary Beth, but then there was that long period of pain. Kerry, you didn't get to say goodbye to Eddie as you may have wished, but there's just no way to make this easy. And for those of who have been listening to this podcast for a while, you'll know that I lost my husband in 2016. And let's just all be real, grief hurts. It sucks.
Yeah, definitely.
It's just plain not cool. And as believers, let's just start by acknowledging that faith doesn't keep the pain away. It still hurts. And let me just ask you guys to comment briefly on how did your faith play into that grief journey? Because it still hurts.
Yeah. Walking through grief, that for me and my 2 girls, we had a lot of conversations about how are we going to get through this. My oldest daughter is a writer, and that's kind of one of her ways that she expresses and through writing and some devotionals, and she wrote a blog of that week that we found out that the cancer had spread, and it's called "The Day I Was Mad at God." And just putting into words some of those, you're dealing with trust and faith on one hand, but just the complete, what do I do? And God, how did this even happen? How did we get to this point? And, I lost my dad when I had just turned 14 years old. I'm the youngest of 6. And, in talking with the girls, that was one thing that I could point back to, is saying, the only thing I can tell you is that we can get through this, that God can help us through this, because I've seen it in my life. And when, I lost my dad, God was with me, and God was leading and guiding and directing. But, you don't always want to put on the pretty spiritual face, especially when you're working at a church, but you're dealing with this intense loss. And I think also what kept me focused is I knew that while I was dealing with loss, while I was dealing with grief, there was a congregation and a ministry that we were leading. They were watching how are you modeling grief? It's not like they're sitting back and watching it, but they're taking notice. And
Yes.
and I think for all of us, the one thing that was huge for me is how do I navigate parenting, and God, please let me navigate and lead them well through this. I'm not going to get it all right. There are going to be tough times, but God, help me do what I can so that they can get through this process.
You felt like they were your girls, as well as those in your church family, really were needing you to go first, to show them how to do this. And I know from experience, you don't feel like you know how to do any of it very well.
No, it's a tough thing. And Kerry and I have talked a lot about that, is, how to walk through, how to lead, but also, you're walking through that process yourself. And a lot of people don't understand how you can put a smile on your face, and they expect you to, on one hand, they want to see that smile on your face, and on the other hand, they're looking at it going, are you just fooling me?
Yeah.
So it's an interesting dynamic when you're in leadership going through that process.
Yeah.
I think for my side of it, saying, showing faith through that, like, how did I deal with that? I remember Eddie teaching the boys as they were growing up, and it's funny, he's teaching them and we're parenting, but it's funny when something like this hits you or it happens, you kind of you didn't realize that you were being taught as well. And he taught the boys that you need to rely on Jesus for everything, and no matter what the circumstance, he would always tell them, I'm not going to always be here. Your mom and I won't always be here. You're going to have to make decisions. You're going to have faith in him. You're going to have to look to him. He's the one that's never going to fail you, and he's never going to leave you. And he said, as humans, we'll fail you, but God will not. And I think what was something that I was sitting there after he had died, and I was sitting in our room, and I just remember thinking, he was right. Like, he'll leave. He left, he's gone, and but God, you're not. And so I know that's a promise that we have, that you haven't left me. So I am going to keep looking to you, and you're going to have to help me. I don't know what else to do. Your human nature, you want to run and you want to hide, and you can't.
Right.
There are times when you can retreat and kind of take a moment, but it's a moment in him. Take that moment in him. Don't take it in Jesus, is what I'm saying. Don't take it in running away or in some other way of, here on earth. I truly believe that,
What you both have said, Kerry, what both Matt and Kerry, you both have said is intent moving forward. This is it's something that's hard to understand. You don't always know what next step to take, right. But the position of, I'm walking anyway. I'm trusting Jesus anyway. I'm parenting my children anyway. I'm putting a smile on my face when I need to anyway. I'm just doing the next thing, regardless of how confusing and horrible it feels. I'm just doing it.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's one area that we've really we have talked about. We've shared in talking with others is, kind of inspiring people, encouraging them, challenging them to take that next step. We can get almost, like you're in the mud, you're driving and you kind of get stuck, and we can put the gas on and try and power through, and we end up burying that, that car, down to the axles where you can't move.
Right.
And knowing that there are times when you have to lay off the gas, there's times when you have to put it on. But the biggest thing for us is we can't just get stuck in life, that we can let grief, we can let fear, we can let anxiety, depression paralyze us, that we don't do anything. And knowing that we just have to take the next step. We're not responsible for what is down the line, but we just have to take that next step and trust God and say, God, whatever you have for us, Lord, we trust you, and we know that you are there for us.
Well, let's talk a little bit about one of those next steps. I mean, you two are obviously together now, and that's got to be a pretty amazing piece of the story. You've both, lost the spouse that you loved. You're both raising children. You've both been in ministry and having to, to experience all this journey. How did God bring the two of you together?
Well, we actually met through, we were going to the same grief counselor. And so I started the week after Mary Beth passed away. I started in counseling. Mm-hmm. And so that was a weekly process for a couple years that we were a part of. And so both of us were seeing that same counselor. We had known about each other's story just because of, both. It was so crazy, the tragedy that had hit both churches across on opposite sides of the town. So we knew of each other's story, but hadn't met. And, I think one day we were talking, and actually not sure if he actually backed our appointments up back to back on purpose, but we met for coffee and talked and found how similar.
Yeah, more so then it was just because we were going through similar, walking through similar things, and it was just like, am I just going crazy? And so us being able to dialogue over that, and maybe get each other's advice, or just to be able to share, and understand the emotions that we were both having, and having to be on it for our children and for our church, and and the two of us being able to sit and go, I just don't have it right now. It was nice to be able to do that with someone.
And yeah, in that process, at first, I think when we were both, it was like we were both looking over our shoulders, feeling like, I know I'm not cheating, but this feels so weird that we're sitting here talking, and, and sure enough, we thought someone is going to see us. When you go through loss, it seems like everyone has an opinion on how you should move forward. But the people that always have the opinions are the ones who've not walked through it.
Right.
And so, I think through that, we both started talking and realizing how similar our lives are. We both were married at 19, served all of our lives in ministry. And then, with that, I saw in Kerry someone who had a similar philosophy of family and marriage, obviously, or walk with Christ. And those were things I wasn't just looking for someone that can kind of, fill that loss and that need for companionship for me. But I knew that at some point, my daughters are going to get married. They're going to have grandkids. And I was more concerned too is, yes, I want to find someone that I can enjoy and share life with, but I also need someone who understands what it is to be a mom and to be able to pour into our girls. She had 5 boys that are now walking through life without a father role, and so there were a lot of things that went into that process.
Was it a challenge for either of you to choose to love again?
Oh, I think for both of us,
Yeah.
it was, I think going through the process to allow yourself, you go through the guilt of, and actually one of the girls had asked me, because they had fallen in love with Kerry, and so they were asking me, Dad, why are you overthinking everything? And and I really, I responded, I'm like, that's kind of what it wasn't what I did before, but that's after Mom died, that's what I do. I overthink what you girls are going to think. I overthink what Mom's family would say, what the boys would say. I said, in a weird way, I even overthink what would Mom say about this.
Yeah.
And, there's so many emotions. You're not only blending kids, but you're blending friends. You're blending extended family from our late spouses. And those are relationships that are too valuable that you don't want to just walk away from and say, nope, found somebody new. We're moving on. And, I think that I just don't like that term of moving on, that, we're taking everything with us. We're moving forward.
That's great. That's right on.
All of those with us. So
what was that like for you, Kerry?
Well, it had some challenges too. I think the thing that I had a hard time with was like, really, like, who is he? Kind of thing. You kind of think that, just not sure. I mean, Eddie and I had been together since we were teenagers, and, we got married young, and we did, you grow together, and it was like, I don't know that I just didn't know how that was gonna be, what we're gonna mesh right. I wouldn't want to make a huge mistake and, years down the road, see that, I just jumped the gun with, this, because for whatever reason, I didn't want the boys, I didn't want them to be treated badly. I wanted the same values to be instilled in them. And, it was kind of like same type of thing. You're just overthinking everything and not understanding that, just not seeing that God knows what he's got your, but he knows what you need. And honestly, like we knew, I don't know how to explain that really, except once we started to talk more and more, realizing that we did have a lot of connections in common. And, I don't know, it was scary at first. Definitely just,
But some witness in your heart said, it was like God saying in your heart, yeah, this is a gift. It's okay. So how long have the two of you been married?
So we got married in August of 2017. So we have made it a year and a half. We're a year and a half in, so we're still newlyweds.
Still newlyweds, absolutely.
But newlyweds with 7 kids. So
that's got to be something. And that was something else I wanted to ask you about. What is it like being newlyweds with 7 kids? Blending families sometimes that can be rocky.
Yeah.
It has its moments. Definitely would say it's been better than I thought it would be. But yeah, I mean, each one has their own personalities, and at any given time, someone else is going through grief, missing their mom, missing their dad, not really sure about the current, status of everything. It's just, they just kind of all have their moments. But they do enjoy each other. And I, thank God for how he has actually brought them together in a way that they enjoy being together. They, they want to do family dinner nights, and they're all here, and it's chaos, but it's fun, and we laugh, and they pick on each other, just like it is honestly one of the craziest things.
We within our first year of marriage, we had our wedding on in August of 17, and then in February, our oldest daughter got married. Then in May, we had a college graduation. And then in June, we had 2 high school graduations. So that was our first 10 months of marriage was complete chaos.
Yes, exactly. And that was just less than a year ago. I mean, all those graduations and, your oldest daughter, that marriage was not quite a year ago. What would the two of you say that you've learned during this crazy year and a half, or maybe are still learning? Somebody who may be listening and there's some dimension of this that they're identifying with. Any thoughts about the things that you have learned or are learning?
Well, I think in that learning process, it's like we're always learning something new. In some of the early conversations that we had, I remember just Kerry had said something, and I took it in a way, as soon as she said it, I responded the way I would have when Mary Beth said the same thing. But it was two different things. And so she looked at it, she was like, hey, hold on a second. Like, I'm not her.
Right.
And I think the communication, there are things that you have to unlearn, your natural tendencies or natural reactions to certain things or certain conversations. And you have to go in to that new relationship with everything on the table, communicating, but also saying, hey, my first reaction is not going to be offense. My first reaction is not going to be ready to, be guarded or whatever, but having open conversations and say, hey, hold on a second. This is what I responded, like this. And so I think communication is a huge thing.
Being willing to communicate, like just being able to listen, and it might be a hard conversation you have to have, or it might be super easy, but for one and not for the other. But being able to understand that, you're coming from 2 different places where 20 plus years of marriage on both sides, and now you're trying to unlearn some things and learn new things. And those can be some challenges, and they can also be kind of fun, when you're trying to figure it out and you're like, okay, that, I guess I reacted that way and I didn't mean to. It's just because that's just, from past things. But that, and then perspective, just having a different perspective on just life, on how you see, being more patient with each other. It's not always easy, being a newlywed. It's, it's a fun newlywed stage, and but you're also learning all the time. Like he said, you're giving every day.
Giving each other grace. Yeah. That's what I hear. Beautiful picture of learning to give each other grace, as well as yourselves grace.
Yeah.
In this process. Yeah.
Yeah. We laugh a lot.
We do. And then one son, our youngest will say, oh my gosh, would you guys stop laughing? And we're like, I'm so glad he says we're laughing and we're not yelling. It's like, I'm so happy that he says that we laugh too much.
Yeah,
you guys laugh too much. And it's like, I'm glad he hears that.
I don't know that there could be a better problem to have.
Yeah.
Well, let's circle around, Matt and Kerry, to where you are now. You are launching some help for other families that may be experiencing pieces of what you've experienced. And I think that what you are doing is such a testimony to how God takes everything that we go through and builds it into something meaningful for others who need that encouragement. I mean, that's the New Testament model, of course, but to see that demonstrated today, and you guys are right in the middle of demonstrating that. Tell us about the Family Blend and what you're launching, and I think that is so exciting.
Well, we are excited about just the opportunity to help people, through the uniqueness of our story. We know that there are a lot of people who are needing help to know that they're not out there by themselves. And so we're launching, it's thefamilyblend.com, and a lot of that started, I think some of it started for our wedding. As a hobby, I would roast coffee, and I've done that for years. And then we started adding to our family and people that were coffee drinkers. And so we were giving out a custom blend of our coffee to people who attended the wedding. And, we had the Family Blend. Well, then we started looking at it and going, oh, wait a second, we can use this for a lot more than just a blend of coffee. But, we're blending lives, and we're also wanting to bring hope to people and inspire them to take the next step after loss and through life, and then in love. That it's a unique space that we find ourselves in, of dealing with grief and then finding love again, and knowing that God can take your broken pieces and he can make something completely new. But through that, you can also honor your past, and you can cherish what God has done and what he is going to do in the future. And so we're launching a YouTube channel, a new podcast, talking about our story, but also giving some help to people who are walking through grief and loss, and then now blending families.
Oh, beautiful. I'm so inspired by your story. I know our listeners are too. Thefamilyblend.com. And we will put links to that, as well as your YouTube channel and some social media links on the show notes for this episode. So I encourage you, if any of this story resonates with you, I want to just encourage our listeners to check out thefamilyblend.com and your social media and YouTube and all that. Thank you, both of you, for just your transparency, your faith, your hope, and willing to share that with others. I know this is a blessing to so many.
Well, thank you so much. It's an honor to be able to be here with you, and we're sure glad that we've had this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Relationship Prescriptions with Dr. Carol. Our purpose is to provide trustworthy resources that help you and others live fully alive in every way as God intended. If you would like to help others experience transformation in their lives and relationships, we invite you to partner with us. Text the word GIVE, that's GIVE, to the number 512-980-1620. Or visit our website at drcarolministries.com/donate to make a one-time contribution or monthly gift. Your financial support allows us to expand our message and to help others. Thank you so much, and may God bless you.